So good morning, everybody. I'm Alessio Lucci Gordisco, and I'm very happy to welcome you to the first session named Data Access and Exploration of our webinar and introductory course to BDTI, so Big Data Test Infrastructure Essential. So again, welcome everyone. We are going to start in just 30 seconds. But first of all, please enjoy this webinar. There will be other sessions in the future, so keep posted. We will post in the chat all useful links for you, our newsletter, our website, how to apply for big data test infrastructure, and again, enjoy it. So before going to the webinar and its core, I just would like to go through very quickly some housekeeping rules. So as you can see, we just defined some housekeeping rules. On the right, you can find the chat and the Q&A widgets. They are located again on the right of the presenter screen. Please, we encourage you to use the chat during the session, but still to wait for ask your questions at the very end in the Q&A portion. We will show you later on where it's located. Microphones and video are off by default. So this means we are sorry, but attendees cannot turn them on. And the session will be recording. Actually, it's already recorded because it will be available shortly after the session. The end of the session on our website. So we again encourage you to participate, but still to keep your question concise, and please don't disrespect anyone, but we are sure this will not happen. In the next slide, you can see this is the agenda of the meeting. This is the locate chat and Q&A. Again, for asking your questions at the very end, you can see there are 3 dots on the right bottom part of the screen. And from there, you will be able to click on Q&A and ask your question at the very end. And lastly, this is the agenda of the meeting. So after this welcome and again stating that we are very happy to have you here today, we will go through the big data test infrastructure, and then we will try to explain and get more clear for you where to find you open data and projects and how the data access and exploration works, and then the Q&A session, and we really hope it will be helpful for you all. Now I give the floor to my colleague, and again, enjoy it and have a nice webinar.
Hi everyone, thanks a lot Alessio for the nice introduction, and I'm really happy to have you all here today. This is Maria Claudia from the European Commission, and together with my colleagues, we are very enthusiastic to welcome you to this first session of the Big Data Test Infrastructure Essential course. So you can see now from the previous slide, thanks again for going back, that we try to collect some insight about our audience, and that's really interesting. You can see that we have many countries, not just from the European Union, we have also some external countries, let's call it like that, and then we have also people coming from different sectors. I would say mainly public administration, that's our main target, but we have also colleagues from academia, from NGOs, and also from private sector. So that's exactly the mix we are looking for. So thanks again for your interest. Then if we go to the next slide, we know, maybe this is also very obvious for you, that to really take advantage of this big data and AI revolution, we need to be aware about risk, about opportunities, and that's why it's crucial to equip ourselves with the right technical skills. One of the critical problems that the public sector, but also the private sector is facing is a significant need of digital and data skills. So it's very difficult to find people with this equipment and with this skill. For this reason, to draw attention to these needs, the European Commission has declared 2023 and also part of 2024 till May, the European Years of Skills. And exactly to support this initiative, in the context of the Digital Europe program, that is a big funding program from the Commission. The big data test infrastructure, that we can easily say BDTI, is offering this free training. We are primarily targeting European public administration, specifically at local, regional, and national level. So if you are, for example, working for a municipality or maybe for a ministry, that's totally fine. Just keeping in mind that this training is really for beginners. So for public servants that wants to explore this free infrastructure to do some experiment around data analytics. That's why we are going to develop together, session by session, a very tangible and practical use case. What we are going to do together in these 5 sessions can be reused in different domains and also in different contexts. So my suggestion is that after the session, you can go to the GitHub repository and to our website, and you can try to redo everything by yourself. If we go to the next slide, thanks a lot. You know, what I really want to stress is that after this training, you will be ready to start your data journey and apply for our project. That's why we are really trying to include everyone. And however, this training is targeting public administration, don't worry, this training is also open to everyone. And we are more than happy to share knowledge and practical tips. For example, you are a citizen, maybe you are a student who would like to support your municipality. Maybe you want to support your region in driving better policies. And you want to analyze some open data, some information that are available using open source tools that we are going to present in this training. So, you know, I'm Italian, I really love cooking, and I think that data analysis is a lot like cooking. You need to have ingredients on one side, but also you need to have very good tools on the other side. That's why we always try to use this metaphor. You know, although raw ingredients, so basically data, may be fascinating at first, the fun doesn't start until you are really actually start slicing, dicing, putting everything together, and eventually starting and serving something that is delicious. We know that data does not speak for itself, and it comes also very often in a very poor quality. We have different formats. We have CSV, Excel, PDF, JSON, linked data. Also, this data can arrive from multiple data sources. You know, you can collect data from sensor, you can collect data from documents, maybe from your Raspberry Pi in your house. It doesn't matter. But all these ingredients together really needs to be interpreted. You need to understand what you're doing, you need to translate and try to argue what you are going to say to really generate value. That's the main challenge when you're doing data, let's say data related activities. No? And you have a lot of ingredients, but like when you're going to, you know, to a grocery shop, you need to understand what you need, the quality, the quantity, and also how to mix them successfully together. That's why it's very key to focus on the process and to focus on the data journey steps. You need to have a lot of, let's say, to have patience, and also you need a willingness to test and start over again. But the good news is that the language of data has a very low learning curve, so don't worry. You can easily learn and practice. And that's also our main goal with this training. If we go to the next slide, you can see in a very short presentation what is this big data test infrastructure. So we just mentioned that in order to do data analytics, you need good tools and good ingredients. Together with good tools and good ingredients, you can really start developing use cases. And that's what we are offering. The big data test infrastructure is basically a playground that you can use for experimenting innovative idea around data. So that's why we are trying to use in this training a list of open data set, and we are going to create together a very interesting use case about green projects around Europe. This big data test infrastructure is something like, I would say, is a Swiss knife for a data-driven public sector. So it's a playground free, a complete free playground based on open source tools and based on cloud infrastructure. So once you have applied for the project, that it's also very, the process to apply is very, let's say, fast and light, you can start developing your idea for a duration of 6 months. And during this process, we are happy to support you. If we go to the next slide, you can see this, the data journey that usually it's very common when you are trying to do some data products. So you have different steps, and for each steps, we are offering you the best open source you can find in the market. So from collection to visualization and also going through orchestration, you will find in our BDTI infrastructure, the big data test infrastructure, a lot of open source tools. That's why we really want to stress the fact that even if you are not from the public sector and maybe you can't apply for this program, you can reproduce our session alone using this open source tool in your notebook. In particular, we want to support public administration, and also we are going to have dedicated infrastructure and the cloud, let's say, resources. If we move to the next slide, why, and we already explained, so now let's more focus on who is the big data test infrastructure for. Again, we are targeting public administration. It's totally fine if you are a local public administration, a regional one, or a national one. And the process is, as I said, is very easy and straightforward. And we are also looking for partnership, maybe with university, with academia, with private sectors, GovTech startups, because very often, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's difficult to find the right skills, the right technical skill in the public sector. That's why we are more than happy to have collaboration with public administration and academia, for example, with students that are doing their thesis. And we are, let's say, we are trying to encourage you applying for BDTI. Thanks a lot. Let's give the floor to our colleague Els from the publication office that will show us where you can find amazing and I would say tons of ingredients for our data analysis, information and open data that are mainly coming from the European Public Administration. Thanks, Els. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria Claudia, and thank you all for joining here and for your interest. So what I will do now is just in 5 minutes show you what data.europa.eu is, because for you it can be a good source of data. So in a nutshell, what we are the European official portal for European data, and we collect open or public data from mainly public administrations, be it at EU, national, regional, or local level. Next slide, please. And this picture, I think, gives a very nice overview of how it works all together. So as you can see here, data.europa.eu, the portal with all the data, is in the middle. And this way, it connects on the one side the data providers, on the other side the data users. So these data providers, as I said, that can be public administrations on all levels in the EU or in European countries. And we also collect geodata from geoportals, also in the same European countries. All these data are harvested by data.europa. We feed them into our system, and they all come out nicely described by metadata and with a search on the website, so our data users can again find them. Who are these users? We have a very wide variety of users. We see a lot of use in public administrations, but also researchers that use it for a study or their thesis or so. We have developers who make value-added adding applications out of the data. We have private companies, journalists who use it as, in a way, as a fact check. And all those people we reach out to them as much as we can. Like that, we try also to collect feedback from them. And sometimes they come to us and they say, but look, this data, there is an error. Or this one's, it would be really handy to have them. All this feedback, we feed back the word to the data providers. And that way they can improve the data, and we always get a better and better and larger offer. So if we look at the next slide, you see that Data.Europa, it's not only about the data itself. That's the core, I would say. And around that, we offer a lot of information and knowledge. It's all there for you, all for free. And what is this? This information are, for example, reports we publish, studies. We have a use case observatory where I will talk about later. And we have, importantly, the Academy. And the Academy is a free learning platform. We organize plenty of webinars. There is one more or less every 2 weeks. So it's completely for free, accessible to all of you. So you're welcome to join it. All the recordings are also available on our website. And then last but not least, we try to facilitate a community for open data enthusiasts. We do this by, of course, sharing our information, but also by bringing them together on social media, talking to them through our newsletters. And we also have a platform where they can exchange best practices, knowledge, questions, etc. If we move to the next slide, we will have a 2-minute look at the core of what we offer you here today, and that are the data. Because I will be very short here so that you have plenty of time to explore it during this webinar today. But in a nutshell, it is we have more than 1.6 million data sets, and they come from 183 data providers. We call it per data provider, we have a data catalog. That's why you see catalogs on the slide. When you go to the data part on Data.Europa, you can simply navigate through the data, but as there are so many, that can be a challenge. So I recommend you to use the search functionality or the filters or a combination of the two. For all the data sets, we provide you also with a set of metadata. Those are translated in all official EU languages, so in 24 different languages. For all the other content that we have, the descriptions, etc., we provide good machine translation. If you have a very close look at the slide, it's a little bit small, you see already that we have the data in different formats. Sometimes you have only one format, sometimes you have 7, 8. If there is CSV or if it are geodata sets, we also offer visualizations. And as I'm not a technical specialist, I like these a lot because I don't have to deep dive in the data. I can immediately see in charts, in bars, in pies, in maps, what it is more or less about. As a last little tool, we also offer you, when you're inside the data set, you don't see it on the slide, but you will see it when you go on the site. There is also a button that says quality. When you click on that, it gives you feedback about the quality of that specific data set. If it's you who the data set comes from, then you also get information, of course, on, oh, where am I doing better? What could I still change? And then my last slide, here is just to give you some inspiration. Because maybe when you go to our website, you find a lot of data and you say, I would like to make something out of that. for my administration to make it work better, or even to make money out of it, because that's totally allowed. You only need your creativity, your business skills, and there you go. So we give you some ideas to start with maybe, and you find them in our impressive list of use cases where we have more than 900 examples. They are very short. It's just a description of the use case, but you can get inspired from it. Then we go a little bit deeper in our use case observatory, because there the aim is that we follow for 3 years long a sample of reusers that are developing applications, etc. And we see how they progress from year to year. Last year, we already published the first report. In end of 22 came the first report. The next one is about to be published, and there will be one more. And then a very easy thing to do, and I can really recommend it, is to read a couple of our data stories. These are very short, easy to read, plenty of visuals, and they can give you inspiration on what do others do with the data, but also if you're more in an NGO or something, how can I use these data to communicate? What's the power of these data? If you see a data story that you like, for example, you're in an environmental agency or NGO, and you see one of our data stories on floods in Europe, you can just use it, put it on your website, link to us, no problem at all. So voila, I promise to be short, so I will stop here. I will unfortunately not be able to stay until the Q&A, but I invite you to register for our newsletter, and I will post in the chat the link to the website, to the Academy, and an email on which you are always very welcome to contact us. So any idea, any feedback, super welcome. And I thank you for listening. I hope you have a very fruitful webinar. And thanks again for the invitation, Maria Claudia.
Thanks a lot, Els. I mean, what you presented is amazing. I'm a very big fan of the data.euro.eu. Please, colleagues, have a look at this amazing portal. You can find also very interesting idea for inspiration. Let's just remind about collecting Q&A. Let's not use the chat, but the Q&A section that you will find clicking on the three dots in WebEx. And now let's give the floor to Skalk and Trinidad. And let's start having fun with our big data test infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria Claudia. So Trinidad's joining me in the studio, and we're going to actually tackle the learning part of this webinar. So before we jump into today's topic, let's quickly have an overview of what you can expect to see over the next 5 webinars and sessions. You can see we have different topics, and it refers back to the data process. Maria Claudia already showed us. So today we're just going to focus on data access and exploration. It's going to be about 45 minutes. And then each of the other sessions are going to be a bit longer. And we'll start off each of these sessions focusing on the exercises, the hands-on exercises that we have prepared that you can actually go and look at, try it out, and then we'll quickly review it. And then you can see if you correctly completed them or if there's something that you didn't understand. Just quickly on the target audience, again, as Maria Claudia already mentioned, this is really focused on beginners. Now, beginners can be mean a lot of things, but we really mean if you've not yet accessed data, like you search for it, you found your data set, to actually opening the data set, looking at the data, deciding what's useful to start processing the data. So we'll go and start right from the start. That doesn't mean we exclude advanced users. There are some of the tools in the BDTI framework which advanced users can also use. So there's a little bit for the advanced users as well, but just to set the expectations, this is really for beginners. So just to already really get this point across, if we say beginners, you might be working in a table, in a cell, and the big mind shift that you need to make, and we already mentioned this, but we're going to say this a couple of times throughout the webinars, you have to go from thinking about tables and cells to think about the process, right? You might be up here, but what you're going to learn is to think like a data professional, a data analyst, and look at the process that you'll be working through. When we speak about a data process, just to repeat again what it would look like, this means you always start with your data access. You might have multiple sources. You'll go over to cleaning and transforming this data to get it to the shape you want to. Maybe you need to blend different data sources or put it back into a database, do some basic analytics with it, or maybe even some advanced stuff. So this is kind of what you'll also see we'll do with the different webinars. So Trinidad, we also brought a use case with us because, you know, it's not only useful to speak about processes, but we need to actually look at what people will be dealing with on a daily basis. So what is our use case looking like?
Thank you, Skal. So yes, so during our webinars, we're going to have a persona, Soy. And Soy, she works in an educational department in one of the most polluted EU regions. And she, with her team, they need to start doing some energy partnerships to tackle down this pollution problem. Therefore, then Soy and her team, they get access to data, public data, so data from Europa and data from CO2 emissions, and they need to build a report to get insights for these energy partnerships. So if we continue.
So that's kind of the basic thing, but if we break it down, what are the ingredients, you know, that Zoe and her team needed to start their project? Maybe let's go a step further, right?
Yes, of course. So we need to tackle down organizations because we need to check with whom we want to do partnerships, right? And then on the other side, we need to take, okay, which are the countries that are doing something to tackle down the pollution in their countries. So then we need organizations, we need information about countries. We also need information about projects and specifically about energy projects, right? And then on the other hand, we need to take information about CO2 emissions. So Soy and her team, they have these different objectives that are the baseline of all this work.
Yeah. So just to make sure I understand correctly, we are going to have to look for data points, for ingredients about organizations, about the countries, about the projects. So when we actually go look at the data sets, these are the things that you need to find, right?
Exactly.
Able to build your report. All right, so let's have a closer look at that. So what is the process that Zoe and her team probably would have followed that people, you know, can repeat when they actually have to find the correct data sets?
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, they need to find a correct set of data, right, to achieve these objectives. Then Soy has to explore the data to make decisions, to have a look how the data looks, what the information the data contains, etc. And then we map the objectives with the data to get insights of the data.
All right. So if you have to literally go and find the data first, shall we quickly demo to the people how this might look like for someone who's never really done this?
Yeah, of course.
So where do we start?
So we're going to start searching for the data. And as a normal data problem, I basically always go and Google. So let's quickly go and Google. So maybe you can help me a little bit with what keywords to search. So
yeah, so we're looking for a data set, something on European funding for projects, right? Something on that side, right? That's kind of what Zoe and her team were working on, right?
Perfect. Let's go and scroll. Okay, nice. So we have, actually look at this. We have European Union and we have data.europa.eu.
So the data portal for the European Union, there you go. It's already in the first list.
Exactly. So this is the data portal that Els showed 5 minutes ago. So here, this is actually the data that Zoe and her team, they're going to use and that we all going to use during this series of webinars. And here, what we do basically, we search for the data, we read the descriptions. Okay, so we have research projects under Horizon 2020. Horizon 2020 was a very big funding for different type of projects in the European Union. So then if we scroll down, we can see that there's a lot of information, a lot of files. And actually, if we continue, we can read, okay, this is a zip file. It contains different formats. We can download it in JSON, CSV. Nice. This looks like something that we can use, right?
Yeah, and if I understand correctly, it's actually recommended to use CSV formats just because it's open. Anyone can access it, whereas you sometimes use things like Excel or proprietary formats where people need to pay for access. In the public domain that's or sector, that's not advisable. You want to use always open tools, open data. So that's a little bit of a tip also for people going forward, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Let me just jump back and grab the screen again for the slides. So now, just to summarize, we have now searched for the data. So this is literally how you would go about. This is how Zoe and them, they knew what they wanted to do, and now they find some data sets. But this is not enough, right? So if you now find a couple of data sets and it looks promising because the Horizon data, it kind of looks promising. You have projects, you have funding, but now what's the next step?
The next step, okay, we have our data and then we need to connect the dots. So we have some objectives, some goals, and then we have this data. So let's start with the first one. So for example, we open and we have these organization data sets. And then in the organization data set, we found project ID, okay, we have names, we have activity type, countries, okay, so as the name of the data set says, this is information about the organizations that participate in the Horizon 2020 and 2021 funding project. So then we can link it to one of our main goals, which is visualize energy projects per member state for organizations and countries. So here we have information about the organizations and the countries, but then we're still missing more information, right?
Yeah, and also there's a bunch of columns there that looks like it's not useful, right?
Exactly. So then we can start thinking, okay, maybe I'm just going to use project ID, name, activity type, and some address information, and the rest maybe
we need to get rid of.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's one data set. We don't have all information. So what I have to do? You have to
continue searching for the information that you need.
So there was the data set from Horizon also had the file we downloaded had multiple data sets, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So now the next one we are looking at.
So then we're looking at the projects data set. So we had organizations first, then projects. As the name says, it's information about the projects. So then we have the ID, starting date, and the total cost. Okay, those three columns are very useful for us, but we're still missing the topic of the project, right? Because we're trying to tackle down pollution, so we need information about energy green projects. So let's keep looking for the information that we need. So then, inside of all these different data sets, we found Eurosci VOC dataset, which contains also a project ID and then a Euroscience VOC vocabulary title. So from here, we can see that we can find information about the energy projects that we need to get insights from. And there's multiple information about, I don't know, employment, software, automation, revolution. So there's a lot of information.
Just to summarize, we started off with the objectives, then we went to search to Google, right? We found a Horizon data set, actually a bunch of data sets on these projects and the organizations involved, and here what type of projects they were. So now we've already identified 3 different data sets, okay? But we don't have all the information in, so what do you need to do now?
Keep looking.
And so, what did Zoe and her team do?
Well, so they went into Google again and they just searched for CO2 emissions, and then they landed in this nice website, which is called Our World in Data, which is also open data, and you can click on the website that we link on the slides. And here we have information about the CO2 emissions. And here we can tackle down other of the objectives, which is check what is the emissions of CO2 emissions on the countries, right? So then when we open this data set, we find that we have a column called country, nice. And then we also have CO2 emissions, perfect. But there's, as we can see, there's 79 columns, 50,000 rows. And as we can see, there's the first countries that we see is Afghanistan and Zimbabwe. And we need the information about EU members, right?
So as far as I know, they're not in part of the EU, right? So again, there you already can see that you probably have to do something with this data set to only get the relevant data, correct?
Yeah.
So again, just to summarize, we already have 4 different data sets, and this is kind of normally when you start off a project and you kind of know where you want to go and you start looking for data, you might end up with multiple data sources and multiple data sets, and you need to figure out if this is relevant, yes or no, and if it's complete, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now that Zoe and their team, they have their data sets, and now they came to us because as a BDTI team, and they would like some guidance on how to go further. So what is the approach then?
Well, so first, as you said, they approach us, and then they're going to receive a special training on the BDTI framework, the different tools, the data, and they're also going to learn how to leverage this open data to get insights from it.
And just to make sure, so if we go through this webinar series, what is the end result? Just to give a little bit of a sneak peek for the people, like what will we be building with this data sets?
Yeah, so do you remember Maria Claudia when she was talking about cooking? So our final pizza, we want it to be a nice report dashboard with some visualizations, and the visualization has to be very insightful, so easy to see and to get information for it, easy understandable. And also we can plot them in a map. We can put the information of the universities, the type of project that they apply for, the amount of fundings. So this is the idea as a final output after this webinar session.
And what I really like about this is that map there at the bottom, which is geospatial data. Now it's a little bit more advanced than your normal plots, but it's super powerful for the public sector, because you really want to see on a map who's doing what and what's the impact, right? Mm-hmm. So if you follow along, this is kind of the skills that we will be working on. But there's a but, right, Trinidad?
There's always a but with data.
So now that we've shown you the contextual layer and how do you get to your data, there's also the other side of the coin, and this has to do with the technical side. Now on here, you can see literally this is the organization's data set, the one that we showed you right at the start. But if you download a CSV file, it will actually look like this in its raw form. It means that there's commas between the values. And the first kind of task that you need to do is get this into a table so you can actually read and explore the data. The same is for when you work with something like a JSON file. Now, this is how a JSON file would look like. There on your left-hand side here, this is how you will get it when you download it. This is a snippet of, I think it's the projects one that we opened earlier. So you also need to get it in a table, because tables you can start filtering, you can join them, you can do all kinds of cool stuff on them, right? Now, if you think that is the final challenge, no, it is not, because if you have multiple data sets, the challenge is not only to get them into tables, but then to start working in all these tables together in hopefully the same environment, the same tool, right? And this is another challenge, a technical challenge that you need to be aware of when you start with these bigger data analytics projects. We have big data sets, you have different file formats. Now, luckily, this is exactly why the BDTI framework was created, because the BDTI team collected a bunch of open source tools that allow you to do exactly this. Now, today we're going to focus on a couple of the tools that helps you to do data analytics, which means that you can not only convert these file types, but you can work with them all together in one tool, which makes it really easy. It's really powerful. So let's actually then jump into today's session. We set the scene. We talked about the use case. We talked about finding the actual data. But Trinidad, what are the people going to learn today when they walk away? Hopefully, what would they be able to do?
Yes, so our learning outcomes are going to be mainly access the BDTI framework, so see how it looks, what it is. Then we're going to teach you guys how to navigate through the service catalog. We're going to launch few of the analytic tools. So today's going to be NIME Analytic Platform, RStudio, and Jupyter Notebooks. And we're going to read the different data files. So CSV, Excel, JSON. So that way we complete the basic data exploration related to what SOI needs.
All right, so since the first learning outcome is accessing the BDTI framework, how do you do that, Trinidad?
Well, so to have access, public administration, you need to apply on the official website. So please go, there's a link here. You go to Big Data Test Infrastructure and you can apply to get access. Once you have access, we follow 3 main steps. So first, we access the portal via the website. Then we navigate the service catalog and we launch the tools. And then step number 3, we go to My Services and open the tools that we have created. Let me quickly show you live how to do this. So I'm going to go first into the main landing page. So here is the whole information of the BDTI. We can see that there's different sections with resources, with other use cases. And once you have access, so for example, we have access now, we can go to the BDTI portal, we can access the portal, you log in with your credentials.
Those are the ones that you get when you register, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So you're gonna get all the information. And here we're in the landing page. So this is the BDTI. This is our nice framework. And here we have, first of all, the service catalog. So the service catalog is where all the open source tools are stored. So here we can see that we have KNIME, Minion, some for databases, etc. Let me quickly show you how to launch one of the tools. So here we click, for example, in Jupyter Lab, and we give it just a meaningful name. So for example, just Jupyter. We select Sestatum. So as we're working as a team, I'm going to put that it's shared. So whatever I develop, you can see, and then you can also make changes, etc. So then we share the work that we're doing. Then depending on your own credentials, so for example, our group is that one configuration, we're going to give it a small one. And related to password, the password they get saved. But myself, I like to keep the password somewhere physically. So we're going to put it here as Jupyter, and we click the password there. Sweet and easy, and we launch it. We're going to get this message, which is success. That means that we successfully launched the service. Then if we go to My Services, we're going to see here that the service deployments. So we have the name, then we have the status. So for example, Jupyter, I just launched it, so it's pending. And then if it's shared or not. Let me quickly show you.
Shall we launch one of them as well?
Yeah.
Open one of them. Yeah.
Let me quickly open KNIME. It's going to request a password. So as it requests a password, all the passwords are saved in my data. So I go here, and here we have the KNIME password. We quickly copy, and we paste the password. Perfect. Here, as you can see, this looks like quite familiar, right?
Yeah, it looks like a normal desktop, but this is not mine locally. It's a virtual one, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So this is what is called a virtual machine. So one of the tools, KNIME, for example, is embedded in a virtual machine. But it actually looks very similar, and it operates very similar as your normal machine. Let me quickly go over KNIME. We can execute it, and we just launch it.
So and that's just where you indicated where to save your work, right? That first box. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
There we go. We can go.
All right. Let me just take us back to the slides here. So let's just recap these steps. So step one is you went to the actual website and you accessed there on the tab the BDTI portal and you logged in. Step two was to navigate to the service catalog, if I got correctly, and there you search for the tool that you want to launch. You click launch, and at the back end, it will start to process. Step three, you go actually to the My Services tab. Here we have a video for you that you can see later on the slides again, and there you'll find the ones that you've launched, and then you can open it like we did with opening KNIME Analytics platform.
Exactly.
Okay, so Trinidad, if someone's watching and they don't have access to the BDTI framework, or maybe they're from a university, but they still want to follow along, they want to upskill themselves, they want to, do the exercises, what can they do?
Well, so these tools, the nature of them is that they're open source, which means that you can download them and use them for free. So you don't need to pay. So we really encourage everyone at home to go on the website and download it, so that way you can follow along the exercises with us with the different webinars.
Okay, so we've now accessed the BDTI framework. We showed how to choose and launch and open the different tools.
Mm-hmm.
But let's actually quickly now focus a little bit more on KNIME Analytics platform. So why are we going to focus on this one, not only today, but also during the rest of the webinars mostly, is because this one is a no-code, low-code tool, which is ideal for beginners. So that means you don't really need to code if you don't want to, right? It's going to use some visual programming or some blocks, as we'll get to in a moment. So this is kind of what we're going to focus on. And for that reason, let me quickly just speak a little bit about how it works, give a quick tour for the people so that they know how to work it, how it's going to function before we get back to our use case and reading in the data into this tool to show people how they can go and explore their own data sets. All right, so two things are important if you're going to work with an IM Analytics platform. The first thing is to know what a node is. And basically, this is a small block. You can think about it like a Lego block. And these blocks perform operations on your data, perform tasks. So that you can see this one is a table splitter. It's very intuitive. It splits a table in two, right? So you have your input that's coming from always from the left-hand side. Your outputs are going to the right-hand side. And you can see there's a status at the bottom. It's very simple. It's very intuitive. That's all you need to know to actually use it. Now, nodes, when you connect different nodes to each other, you are actually building a workflow. And as the word says, that's it. That's the flow of your work. You start on one side and you go to the side, go and progress down the line. All right, so let me now quickly jump over to IM Analytics platform, the one that you opened already for us, and then we give a quick tour for people to see how they will actually use it. Okay. So now I am going to open IM Analytics platform, the one we already launched. So here you can see this is what if you open it, this is what you'll see. This is basically a start or landing page. Now, a couple of things for beginners that are useful. There's a bunch of example workflows. It means it already comes with workflows that you can go and look at. So you don't need to start with a blank canvas, which is also always a bit of intimidating. So here is just where you can go and search for your files, where you stored them or your workflows. And this big yellow button is useful because you create workflows from there. You can just launch it and open it. Let's actually click on one of these example workflows. Now here you can see the workflow here in the middle. And this is where the magic is going to happen. And it's also called the workflow editor, right? Let's quickly go to the top. Here you have tabs that are useful if you have multiple projects open. At the side here, you have a navigation bar. And in the top, that is for a description tab. So if you are not sure what this specific node is doing, you can simply read it there. Here, you can find the node repository. That's literally all the blocks live. And you're going to go search for them to find a specific operation or task you want to do. And let's say you have found what you want, a CSV reader, you can just drag and drop it into the workflow editor. It's as simple as that. Okay, then here you have the Space Explorer. This is again your files and folders. That's an easy way to browse them. And then at the bottom here, I'm not going to show it now, but there's an AI assistant. So if you want to go play around with that, you're welcome. Let me show you a couple of other things before we get to the data access of the actual data that we worked on. So if you click on the node and you execute it, you can find the preview of the data or the actual data table at the bottom. And this is quite useful if to do your data exploration and also to see as you go along your workflow, like here, there's a concatenation. And if you click on it, you can see how your table is changing from the first one to the second one.
And Scott, one question. So you show me this example. This one, you build it yourself or it comes with the analytics platform when you download it?
Now, this one, when you go to the BDTI framework or download an IM Analytics platform the first time, these ones are available there. So you can go check them out, play around them. There's some dummy data and then you can just
start learning straight away.
Exactly. So a couple of more important things here. If you click on your node, you can see if you hover over it, you have some buttons at the top. The first one is the button for the configuration. It's a gear. So there you can just tell the analytics platform what you want to do with your data. It's the settings tab. Then you also have, you can reset your node, you can execute it, and you can see the status is changing there. And here you can also stop. If you have a big data set and you realize, I did the wrong setting, you can actually then stop it if it's still processing. Okay. That's it for the overview or the tour. Let's jump back to the slides and get back to our use case. Opening the slides here. Okay, again, all of this will be in slides that we'll share later. So if you want to recap it, either watch the recording or the different slides. Back to the use case, back to Zoe and her team.
Yes. So today, it's going to be the beginning of the data process, right? So we're going to start with accessing the data. So the data that we saw before, we're going to actually have it locally and open the different data formats, so CSV, Excel, JSON, etc. And then we're going to show everyone how to actually access and read this data.
Exactly. And again, we are here in the beginning of our data process, the first step, and you can't, everyone has to deal with it. So if we are speaking about data access, and we're going to demo it in the other tools as well, but we're going to focus mostly on Nine Analytics platform because it's no code, low code for beginners, you'll see that a couple of things to know is that, as you see here, all these blocks that have to do with data access has the color orange, which is quite useful. Here you can see there's different file types. CSV is also important, as we mentioned. A bunch of other ones there. You can connect to databases, which we'll actually do in one of the later webinars to show if you are working with data that lives on a database, how can you get it from there, or how you can export it again to databases. Also, if you're working with data on the cloud, you can also connect with it all in one platform, which is really powerful. That's why it's also of the BDTI framework, so that it makes it easier for you to work with big data sets from different sources. Just quickly on the reader notes before we jump back to the platform to actually show you the data. So one of these reader notes normally does not have an input port, mostly an output port. There can be more than one output port. If it's a triangle, it says that you are putting out table formatted data, and here at the bottom we'll show you can also label them. Shall we actually jump into the platform and access the data that Zoe sent us? All right, so let's jump back to the platform. Now I actually have a tab open here that we can access the open data. So let's just recap. So Zoe, we showed how her and her team went to the European data portal, got the data sets downloaded. Right now it's on your system somewhere. Now you want to start exploring it. How would you do it with this with Nine Analytics platform all in one space? So as we said, the first thing that you could do is you can go and search and say, okay, one of the files we know is a file format Excel. So you can simply choose the Excel reader here and drag it in there. And now we're going to tell Nine Analytics platform where this Excel file lives. So every reader node has a section at the top here where you're going to tell it where the input location is. There's a couple of options that you can choose from locally if it's on your local system. The mount point if you connect it to a server or something like that. Relative to, that's my favorite. So if I know my data is saved somewhere close to where my project, my workflow is saved, I can just tell Nine to go look somewhere close to relative to that specific file in the folder. And the URL is also when you are connected to maybe something in the cloud. All right, so let's do the relative to. I'm going to say relative to this workflow. And then I am going to browse. So this should look all familiar to everyone. There's the folder I saved it in, and there's the file. So now I can open it. Here I can see a preview. That looks correct. And now I'm going to read the data into the platform. And here I get the preview at the bottom. So here I can see this specific data set has 120,000 rows. It has 5 columns. And here we can see it has the project ID. And here this is the data set that tells us which project it is. Nice. So again, here you can read in it. It's something similar to what you already see in a spreadsheet. So this is a simple example, right? Sure. But let's say you're working with the CSV. How would that work, right? Very simple. You can go to where the CSV file is saved in the cloud or in the system, wherever you saved it, and you can simply take that file and drag it in here. So Nine Analytics platform already recognizes CSV, so there's no fancy in-between steps that you need to do. You can simply drag it in here.
And is that only for CSV or for all kind of?
This is for all the types of files. You can just drag and drop it in there. So what's nice here, or good to know, okay, so this top section where the file lives, that's already populated. We don't need to do anything there. So here, this is interesting. We said already earlier, we showed a snippet of a data set, and we saw that the values are separated by commas, right? That's what it means, a comma separated.
Separated value.
Exactly. But now you have data sets sometimes that don't have commas in between, but they have something different, right?
Semicolons or dots, for example.
Exactly.
Actually, this one is with a semicolon, right?
Exactly. So if we only put a comma in there, then it doesn't read it, right? So luckily for us, it automatically picked up that there's a semicolon. But when you have the correct delimiter there, it reads your file, converts it to a table, and now we can go explore it. We say, okay, we execute this one. And now we can say see this one has over 177,000 rows.
Wow.
We see the columns, we can see the names of the different columns, we can see the data types they have, number, string, etc. Right? So there we can go now and explore your data set. You can also open it in a larger window if you need to, and then you can scroll and decide which columns you need, what to do with the data in there. You can also see there's a data type there, or it looks like a question mark, right? I mean, what do you think that is?
I think that's amazing.
Yeah, all right, it's actually hovering over there so you can see it. So obviously, when you clean your data later, you have to decide what to do with these values as well.
Exciting.
Okay. I want to show you one more. So people might already know what CSVs are. Some people might not know what a JSON file is, right? So I'm just going to drag it and execute it. I'm going to show you what it looks like originally. So if you click on it here, actually, you know what? I'm going to show you on the slide. It's even easier. So I'm jumping back to the slide just to show you how it looks. Again, these slides will be available for you afterwards. So JSON, it's a different file format, right? So again, it gives you the information you need that you can convert to a table. But here you can see this doesn't look like a table with columns and rows, right? So here we have what we call keys. They are listed here, and the values for them. So to understand it simply, a key would be the heading of the column, and the value is the one that's supposed to be.
So it's the value itself.
It's the value that goes into the row.
Perfect.
Now, instead of having it in the shape of a table, this is listed as one item is listed together. That's why they call it an object. So it's the same data, just a different format, right? So now the question is, how do you get this into a table, right? So let me jump back to NIME Analytics platform to show the people how you do that so you can explore Zoe's data. So here's another cool function about NIME. You just start dragging the output port, and it suggests to you with the quick node editor what possibly
is the next step.
Yeah. So it's a bit of AI built into the platform.
A little bit of help.
A little bit of help. So the node you would need in this case is called the JSON path. And here it's very simple. You see the actual data point as an object. And now you can choose and tell NIME which columns do you want from here and which values do you want from here. So for instance, if I want the column called acronym, I click here, and then I say, do I want just a single item, a single row?
We want the whole data set.
We want the whole data set, so we're going to say add collection. And let's just add a couple more. It's very simple to do.
Straightforward and very intuitive.
There you go. So let's say OK. Let's execute it and see what happens. Now you can see we have the regional JSON object there in the first column. And now you can see acronym is up here. Acronyms as the title of the column and content, update, etc. So there you can see it's now converted the keys into the heading names. But the problem is the values are still listed in one row.
So we need them in a tabular format,
exactly.
Right?
So this is the last step we have to do. So we're going to ungroup them. Very simple. I can just execute. Now the configuration here is easy because you just say which to exclude and include. We want everyone, so we're just going to execute it, and there, et voila, you see a table.
It's very easy. One more question for you, Skulk. So here, if you share this workflow with me, I don't really know what you did. I mean, I don't know the steps. Would it be useful for you, for me, that you comment me a little bit and, I don't know, show me, oh, here I did this, here I did that, etc.
Yeah, so the point you're making is documentation, right? And so this is super important if you work for other people or if you open your workflow again later in a month or so. And you can do this simply by adding a note there. So we can say this is data on organizations. And then you know this data that we read in there, this is the file I said. And you can also see the annotations, the block around there. So there's ways of telling people who are working with the data that is what is going on there. Now, last point before we continue with the use case and the other tools is that what's very powerful about this tool and why the BDTI framework is suggesting you use one of the various analytic tools is that now we see we have different file types in one, so you can see and explore your data here at the bottom directly, but you can now go and, for instance, you can join these very simply in one platform, what we'll do later, and now it becomes very simple to get you the data you need for your report.
Nice.
Okay.
Are we going to see this later on?
This is one of the later webinars, but just to show you why it's important and powerful to work with all your data types and sources in one place. Back to the use case, because we are not done there. So Trinidad, in Zoe's team, they have people that actually are a little bit more advanced, right?
Exactly.
So what do we do for those people with the BDTI framework?
Well, so we already saw an animated platform, so for beginner level. And for the more advanced who already know how to code and they have like their favorite tool, sometimes it's RStudio, other times can be Python. So we're going to actually demo both today. It's going to be quickly. So for those who don't know how to code, don't panic. This is for all of them who already know. So RStudio, I'm going to go quickly. I'm going to share my browser. So do you remember here on the BDTI framework? So we have here ready to work RStudio. We're going to quickly open the username. I remember it was RStudio. And then if we go to my data, here's where all the passwords I'll save. I also save them myself locally, but they are all here. So we go on top and then we click copy. And as easy as that, we paste the password and we open RStudio. So this actually looks the same as you have it in your own machine. We're not going to go that much in detail today on this, but for example, here we already read one of the data files and we can explore it with RStudio. Let's quickly jump into Jupyter Notebook. So we go on My Services, and do you remember that we launched live Jupyter? Now is active. So it was pending before, now it's active, so it's ready to use. We click on Open. It's going to ask for a password. We go on My Data. We look for Jupyter, copy the password, go on the server, paste, login. And for all of you who already know how to use Jupyter Notebooks, it's going to be like a normal Jupyter lab in your computer. So it's going to have a landing page with the different tools that you can use. I click on Python, for example, and here we can operate as we are in our computer. So for example, here I'm reading the CO2 data, and this is how actually our CO2 data looks. All the columns, and it is the same as we showed
at the beginning
on the slides.
Yeah. So the point is, again, you have the use case with the objectives and what you want to get from the data, understanding what the ingredients, but the tools is the how you actually get to that. And we've now shown three ways of doing that. Speaking of summarizing the session, because we want to leave some time for some questions, let me grab the screen again. And now we're done with session one, but let's quickly summarize what have we done, what should the people be able to do after this session? Yeah, so after today, everyone should be able to access the BDTI framework, navigate through the BDTI service catalog, then launch the different data tools. So today was NIME Analytic Platform, RStudio, and Jupyter Lab. Also read different data types like CSV, Excel, and JSON, and be able to complete the basic data exploration in relation to each use case. So today, soy. Yeah, and again, data exploration is now that you can access the data and the tools, go and see which columns are useful, what do you need, what you don't need, which filtering you have to do in the rows, etc. Okay. That being said, we're going to give back to Maria Claudia. We still have a couple of minutes for questions. So let's give back the floor to them. But before that, let me actually just say this. Sorry, Maria, Claudia, next session, what are we going to do there?
So today was the first building block, data access. And then next session, so in 2 weeks, we're going to have data cleaning and transformation. So we're going to start actually doing something with this data. So we have the different tools. Now we're going to start the cooking process.
Exactly. And 2 more slides. Practice, the exercises, the recordings, the videos, the slides are all available at this link in the GitHub repository. So please go check it out there. And you have exercises which you can do in the analytics platform, also the other platforms, and you have step-for-step instructions. Okay, now back to Maria Claudia.
Thanks a lot, Trinidad. Thanks a lot, Skalk. It was really interesting and engaging, following all the steps. And I think also for our audience, looking at the comments, it was really, really interesting. Thanks again.